Welcome to the What One Thing podcast, where we ask successful people what made the difference in their lives and careers. Today, we are addressing a serious topic: support for meeting professionals at the highest levels. When even your family doesn't really understand what you do, how are policymakers going to address the vital role meeting planners have on our economy, medical and scientific advances, and human connection? We have invited leadership from Live Events Coalition to address the threats facing meetings and how you can be a force for good when you're out in the world. Please welcome President Chairwoman Wendy Porter, Government Affairs Chair Dwayne Thomas, and Marketing and Media Chair Al Mercuro. Hey, guys.
Hi, JT.
Hey, JT.
So everything that happens in the world affects an event. I want to hear about your aha moment. We'll start with you, Wendy, and then go Al and Dwayne. When you realized you had to speak up on behalf of the hospitality community, explain your background and how VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, shook you out of your individual role to make a wider approach.
Let's rewind back to March of 2020. I was actually on show site at an event in San Francisco when the pandemic became very apparent that we were in trouble. Made my way home from that, and within a couple of days, we had a person who put out a petition, actually. So I'm giving a little bit of the backstory on LEC. He put out a petition when he realized that we were in trouble as an industry. Put out a petition and overnight had, I don't know, Dwayne, you can confirm this, something like 600,000 signatures and a lot of people stepping up going, yeah, I'm in trouble. My business in trouble. I'm an independent. I'm in trouble. We knew there was an issue. And I, as a small business owner, knew there was an issue, right? Everything was shutting down. I was watching business vaporize right in front of me. I don't rely on an employer to pay my bills, right? I'm on my own. I have my own small company. Coming out of corporate, I was inside corporate, and now I'm a corporate survivor and have had my own company for about 10 years.
You are a survivor.
So the coalition stood up pretty quickly in March of 2020, mid-March. And then various of us just started hearing about it from the national side and then started working more locally. So my first entree into this was really standing up the coalition here in Minnesota. So I was getting very active with local people here on looking at what was going on with the state, what was going on with regulations and shutdowns here, and how we were going to manage through that. And then, we just all started collaborating because we needed to sort of understand what was happening across the country. And that's when I started meeting all these people from across the country as part of LEC. So that's sort of the backstory and how I first got it started in it. And Dwayne was actually really there more on the national level even before I was. So I'll let you tell that part.
Dwayne, also tell us, do the cool kids call it LEC? Is it Live Events Coalition? Is it LEC?
It's LEC or Live Events Coalition. I don't think we've ever called it LEC.
No.
All right. Dwayne, tell us your aha moment.
Like Wendy and so many other people around the world, we certainly weren't unique. A lot of us figured it out about the same time that we were in big trouble for the pandemic back in March of 2020. And myself and 4 or 5 other colleagues from everything from meeting planning company to DJ company to wedding planner, a big event rental company, and myself, I'm in lighting here in Portland, Oregon. We started having daily phone calls going, what on earth are we going to do? We were kind of in the position that it's like, okay, this is going to be a couple of months. So let's figure out, is there a way we could talk to the state house and see if there's going to be any assistance, because they're already talking about shutting down events in our state. And then we found out they're talking about it everywhere. At the same time, probably about the same time Wendy we saw this giant petition go out. It turned out to be the founder of the LEC. He hosted it and got what appeared to be hundreds of thousands of signatures on it. So you could see that there was a lot of concern. And we're like, oh, this is bigger than anything we even do. Like Wendy, we also, that group of 5 started a state coalition here in Oregon and immediately took the lead of the petition that was going out nationally from Isaac, who founded Live Events Coalition. I look back at it now and we really didn't know what we were doing. Why would we? We're all from the event space. We sent out a petition to the state asking for literally 15 items of assistance. And little did we know that's not how it works. But fast forward to, we started seeing on social media that the Live Events Coalition was actually propping up state coalitions everywhere. And we're like, well, how do we get involved? I think Wendy saw the same thing from Minnesota because she had started a coalition there. We've got this Facebook page, private page going on, and we had, instantly like 2,000 members from Oregon in our little coalition, and everybody posting, everybody concerned. And it just took off from there. We found out that we could go to these LEC national Zoom meetings that were a couple of times a week. Wendy and I became as involved as we are. I can confidently tell you, because both of us were willing to open our mouths and say stuff.
That's huge.
After I'm not quiet. And so.
And neither am I.
And neither is Wendy. And that's kind of how it works. So, I mean, if that's what got us where we are, then okay. Pretty soon, Nancy, the president of LEC, Ivory, one of the other board members, called me one day and said, listen, we want you to run government affairs. I'm like, why me? What on earth? She said, well, you've already done a couple of petitions in Oregon, right? I said, yeah, for all that could, we can't even get a meeting with our governor. So they said, look, here's the deal. You're the only one that can do this. We've asked everybody else, so we think that you're the guy.
Nancy is very persuasive. Nancy is very persuasive.
That's her secret sauce for sure. So that's how I got involved in all of it. And there's a lot more to the story, of course, that transpired since then. And Wendy and I got in the trenches together. Wendy and I have only been in the same room once. She just happened to be visiting friends in Seattle, and I had to go to a meeting in Seattle, so we sat down for lunch. But we've been on, Wendy, what do you figure, close to 1,000 phone calls and Zoom meetings?
Hours and hours, over 1,000 hours, I'm sure, of calls.
Yeah. Back then, that's all it was. All of the advocacy that we did was all via Zoom until Wendy put a local town hall on with 2 Minnesota representatives, one of which was her own. That was, interestingly enough, when we finally got something to happen. But more on that later. Now,
it's been a learning curve for everyone, right? And Al, I want to hear your story of how you figured out, it was time to step up.
Well, like what was said before, I guess I can't believe it's been 6 years almost coming up.
Wild.
When that sort of everything shut down. And I'm at a point in my life where I had to stay busy. I just could not do nothing. I started taking some certification classes I never had time for. I decided to sit on lots of Zoom meetings with industry folk just to hear what was going on. So I came late into the game with the LEC. I saw some things on social media that they were doing. I kind of liked what they were doing. And I felt I needed to volunteer to maybe give back and help those that needed help. I guess might have been Nancy I first reached out to. And I said, where do you need help? Where can I jump in? And it sounded like marketing and social media was an area that we needed some help in. So I said, fine, I'll work on that.
And your background is big events, expositions, trade shows.
Yeah. Special events, things like that. Yeah.
So you really felt it.
Yeah. And it just happened like just amazing. One day we had a cruise setting up, I remember, at the Expo West in Anaheim, and we had to literally take the booths down and ship them back. It just, before the show opened, it just stopped.
Yep. Same for my clients. I had freight on the floor at HIMSS in Vegas, I think, as well. So
I don't want to cause any PTSD. Think it back to those days, but it's not just global pandemics, right? Economic downturns hit planners, government shutdowns, rising egg prices can be a huge blow to budget. Sometimes it just seems like meeting professionals can't catch a break, right? We thought 25 was going to be our year, and then now we're looking forward to hopefully some changes in 26. I want to hear from each of you. What are the biggest challenges you see planners facing right now? And we'll go Al, and then Dwayne, and then Wendy.
Well, initially I thought it was going to be tariffs. It was going to affect businesses, and I think it still can. It hasn't. We have not seen, speaking from my end, we have, thankfully, I guess, have not seen an impact yet on our business.
Good.
So I can't speak for everybody else here, but I'm just speaking from my side of the coin here. That still may change in 2026, but that was I think one of the biggest reasons I think LEC decided to come back, obviously, was because of the tariffs early on in 2025. We felt that was a reason for us to start advocating again. So I still feel it's out there. I still feel it is definitely affecting others out there. We've seen some price increases on our end from our vendors. Obviously, we've had to raise some prices on some of the things we've done, but in terms of our clients stopping what they're doing, we have yet to see that happen. But I know it's affecting others.
Dwayne, what is the biggest risk out there right now, 2026?
It's a toss-up. Al's right. Tariff didn't murder us like we were worried that it would, but there's been so much, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. What did it create? It created a sort of decision paralysis with some of our bigger clients. And I know that in the corporate space in particular, there's a lot of freeze on annual events that we might have seen them do before, and they're spending down a little bit less. I'm in the lighting world, so it tends to be one of the first budgets to get cut. So if the budget's smaller and the rental company isn't noticing it, we probably are. Weirdly, it hasn't impacted social events at all. We were worried it would impact fundraising events. We still haven't found out. The big piece of that is that everybody has to remember when you work a gala, it tends to have a big corporate sponsor that pays for the production in most cases, or most of the production. So if those corporate spaces are being tight with their own events, imagine what they're going to be like with events that they're sponsoring for a nonprofit. But we're a little worried that the impact of tariffs hasn't quite gotten there yet, other than that sort of decision paralysis. The bigger thing that's here right now is the ACA credits drying up. Those two items are the things that I've been talking about on Capitol Hill, a couple of trips there this year already, and stressing with members of Congress how deadly those can be. The thing you have to remember about this industry is that it wasn't just the pandemic. It was also 9/11. If you were working in this industry then, you see what it did for a while. But it was over pretty quick. We got back to normal pretty quickly, but not for several months. And then there was the downturn of 08, 09. It's a tender industry, and it's also such a community. We all rely on each other. What in fact affects me affects the guy building the exhibit. And what affects that guy affects the sound guy. It affects the rental company and the florists. And if the florist budget goes up because they're sourcing most of their floral pieces from Central America, and now they're paying 50% more or 70% more or whatever it is. Well, nobody's going to print money for us. That just means that the rest of the event is going to be impacted. It's very hard to put a number on that like we could with COVID. So the advocacy piece for this is trickier. You have to drill down on a couple of key points. I'll say this much. Before I went to D.C. in October to talk to some members and meet with small business administration and such, I asked my staff how they were going to be impacted by the dry up of the ACA credit. And of the 8 of them, 4 of them said they're all under 35. 4 of them said, I'm just not going to have it. That's really bad for me. If something happens to them, they don't have a way of paying for their own medical care. That's really bad. One of them, though, said, well, I'll just have to marry my partner. It's not why we want to get married, but at least they have insurance. And so I guess we're just going to have this sham marriage. So funny thing, I went in, I was having this whirlwind day of meetings back and forth across the Capitol grounds from the Senate side to the House side, to the Senate side to the House side. And getting towards the end of it, I'm sitting at a meeting with Senate Small Business Committee staffers. And I got a tap on the shoulder, said, we need to get you out of here right now. We need to meet the Senator Mercuro now. I said, I thought that was in a half an hour. He goes, no, we have to go all the way to the Capitol. You can't meet us in his office. We have to go to the Capitol. So we get pulled over there. We get sat down with my own senator from Oregon, Jeff Merck. There's me and another business owner from Portland. And so we're telling our stories about the tariffs. I'm telling about ACA. And I told him the stories that my staff said. He looked at me and goes, I need to say this on the floor. I said, well, Senator, that's exactly why I'm here. And we had our half hour and he got scuttled out by his staff saying, we need to get you to your next thing. We need to get you to the next thing. Little did I know until the very next day, I got a call from his chief of staff saying, hey, you turned on your TV lately. He said, no, I was asleep. And then I've been in meetings with small business administration. He goes, well, Senator Mercuro is still on the floor. He's been there for 26 hours. And he emailed me a clip of him quoting from that story. So I'm not telling you this to say that I did this great thing. I'm telling you this to say that what you say to your elected officials is someone who's impacted and needs a voice. You just have to say it. I like to say, I know that all of my elected officials here in Oregon are kind of on my side on these issues. And I don't want to get into politics. That's not it. I don't party politics. It has no place in advocacy, honestly. But I already know they agree with me. But here's the thing. You still say it. You say it because you might give them the soundbite they've been looking for to get this done. We're sitting in a place now where so far the ACA credits haven't been saved. And so we have folks with their premiums going way up. I'm on Medicare, and it has nothing to do with ACA. My premium tripled. It's impacting everybody across the board. And now, as of 2 days ago, there's news of a continuing resolution in the House that would extend the credits for 3 years. And it's what's called a clean CR, where there's no other language attached to it.
Right.
Like, we'll do this if you XYZ. So it's a clean CR, which is almost unheard of in this environment. But apparently the speaker has agreed to put it to a vote, and we know of at least 4 Republicans that are going to say yes to it. So this is a direct impact of folks like us picking up the phone and saying, are you kidding me? I rely on Affordable Care Act. I can't have insurance otherwise. There are constituents who say that.
Yep. Storytelling
is powerful, and your voice counts. Wendy, what do you see as the biggest challenges? Is it visas?
From the planner side, it's all about costs right now, right? Everything is, and there's lots of reasons for why that's happening. Could be tariff related. It could be economic issues that are driving costs up. So we're seeing the impact there with clients having to pull back because they're not getting more budget, right? So they're either doing less events, smaller events, bringing planning in-house because they can't afford the external planner. I mean, they're having to make hard decisions, right? And so that was really impactful for me in 25. I had just a really difficult year. My clients are mostly in the healthcare space, and they had a double whammy. So not just costs going up, but also federal funding being pulled, right? From some of the insurance companies and companies like that I have historically worked with. So, for me, it's all around the continuing increases in costs, I think, is a big risk. So.
And that's something that we have to share the real life impact of, or else we can't make a difference.
The geopolitical stuff that's going on, I think, is affecting also international travel to the U.S. specifically. And I know Vegas is, I think, hurting in the hotel area, if I'm not mistaken.
Vegas is not doing well.
Yeah, so it has an impact already on that. I mean, there's less attendance from international attendees coming to events. Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm interested to know about CES, how affected that may have been impacted. But that's my biggest fear for 2026 is how that's going to impact the event industry, the implications of everything that's going on in Washington right now.
And it's both real and imagined, right? It's perception as much as it is reality, right? If people feel that getting a visa is going to be hard, maybe they don't even try.
Yeah, and it's not just about the visas. It is about the visas, but it's about the additional rules that they're potentially layering into the visas, right? I mean, that's not a done deal yet, but it's on the table, right? And if that happens, that is major.
And just the headlines can make people hesitant.
Yep.
Or it can make a planner decide to bring the event to Canada, where maybe you're going to get people that don't want to deal with that.
Right.
Which is interesting.
And then, Canada, there's a whole other level. There's a whole other layer to the whole Canadian relationship right now. So,
and talking about perception, so we often joke that we are not the best PR people for ourselves, since we tend to lead with how hard our jobs are rather than our impact. So when you're out there, how do you describe the diverse, wide-ranging live events business to friends, family, local stakeholders, and politicians? We'll start with you, Wendy.
Oh, that's such a big question. I talk about it as being the tapestry, right? When you do an event for a corporation or a brand, it is a tapestry of all the pieces of that company coming together in 3D, right? It's the product, it's the sales, it's the marketing, it's the leadership, it's everything coming to life in, for real. So they're important. One of the things I have been talking about a lot in the last year is that we really have research now that talks about the value of events. I've been doing this for 23 years, and back in the day, I knew intuitively they were important, but I had no metrics to back it up. And now I have metrics. So now we have multiple research studies that say events are the number one channel for both marketing, ROI, and building trust. And in the world that we're in now with AI on the scene, I think it's going to become an imperative that events are a priority, because people just don't really even know what's real anymore, right? See a video, was that a real video or was that an AI video, So they want to see people like in the flesh to know that it's real.
I think that's a great description. And I think it is going to really power the importance of events. Went right to the heart of it. Al, how do you describe the live events industry?
It's a very unique industry in the fact that I remember Jackson Browne wrote a song about the roadies back in the 70s called The Load In. And they're the first to come, they're the last to leave. And unless you're in the industry, you really don't know what that means. And I started as a stagehand myself at a Beach Boys concert in college. Oh. And I was hooked. There was something about being behind the scenes, being part of the action of getting things ready for the show, staying late to load the trucks up. I mean, not everyone likes to do that kind of stuff. And the people that do, they find that this is their industry. This is why they do what they do. So it's not a 9-to-5 job by any means. I think I posted something about this week about 20. It's like we don't get days off, but we do get days off. But, we work Sundays, we work Saturdays, we work holidays, it's, again, not for everyone. But the people that do get into it and like it, they enjoy it.
It's an addiction, pretty much. Addiction. Yeah. Dwayne, how do you describe it so people understand the impact we have?
That was a big aha moment going back to the beginning of COVID. One of the reasons we knew that we were so in trouble, my colleagues and I and the folks at LEC that we're meeting a couple times a week, you immediately realize, oh, no, nobody knows this industry exists. Because, we all wear black to work so that we disappear. Nobody goes to a fundraiser and understands there's probably 35 vendors working to make this happen. If you start naming them all, from the caterer on down, and the entertainment company, sound, video, all of it is probably 25, 35 entities. And they're not all from the same industry. That's the scary point. One of the first things we found out is that we occupy way too many what's called a NAICS code, which is the code your business is given to describe what industry you're in. Because we were hearing of 30 and 40 and 50 different NAICS codes people were using. That means there's no research to prove what this industry does. So it isn't an industry. And we started talking about it like this. Think about having your house built. That has several vendors on it too, doesn't it, right? You've got an excavator, you've got a foundation person, then you've got a framer, then you've got a roofer, you've got an electrician, plumber, HVAC, all these different experts go into building a house. Same way with an event. The difference is they get to all call themselves from the construction. We just don't. So one of the things that stopped us in our tracks was they'd say, what's your industry worth? We had to cobble together numbers from all these different sources of research to even figure out a close estimate, which was in the high $800 billion, which was something like double the size of the auto industry. And then when you combine it with hospitality, and you combine it with travel and tourism, and those three things kind of rely on each other, as we know. So that was probably the way we looked at it had to change. We had to understand the language has to be around demonstrating that the lighting company relies on the planner, relies on and just because you're in trade show and all you do is trade show because you built this, well, you know what? I do trade show too, but I also do corporate events. I do product launches. I do fundraising. I do weddings. I do freaking bar mitzvahs, for crying out loud. So there's a company that's going, well, I'm just a wedding planner, so I'm only in weddings. So I'm in the wedding industry. So we had to go pump the brakes. It's all one industry. Many of us are going to serve more than one vertical market. So that was kind of a growing moment, I think, for all of us is that the realization we can no longer be behind the scenes. We can no longer be invisible. And so the better part of 3 years, Wendy and I were proving that the industry existed, members of Congress and to state houses all across the country. And we were teaching people who were leaderships in state coalitions how to do the same thing.
So, Dwayne, that leads us into our final question, and maybe you can help us with this. This is our lightning round. This is what is the one thing a meeting planner can do to adapt and shape the forces that either hold us back or can hold us up? One thing.
Speak up. Call your elected official. If you have something that you're worried about that you feel they need to hear, you can't think, well, my voice is no good. They're not going to change anything. Look how broken it all is. I'm telling you, say it out loud.
Now's the time.
Even if you're leaving a voicemail, even if you're sending an email, they have staff that's required to look at all of those. It's going to get seen. And when you do it, we have a saying in writing and communicating to elected officials, you get one page and it needs to bleed in the first paragraph.
Sound like a journalist. Al, how can they learn more about Live Events Coalition?
By getting involved. If they want to help, I think we need people out there to get back and help us. Like I joined in and helped. I mean, that's part of, I guess, doesn't matter what age you are. I think you have to be able to want to feel like you're doing something to help others. And I think that there's no age limit to that. I think you need to adapt to all the changes that are going on. I think as people get older, they tend to get too set in their ways. I think in our industry, you have to be able to adapt to new technology, to whatever might be out there.
Nice. Wendy?
Yeah, I think my word is adaptability as well. Just being open to new ways of doing things, new thinking, being involved, getting engaged, speaking your voice, adapt to the environment that you're in.
And they can learn more at theliveeventscoalition.org.
Correct.
All right. Hey, thank you for representing the Meet Smart community out there. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through all of this because it's a learning process for all of us. And we're busy just living our lives and getting our deadlines met and checking our boxes, right? But we need to be thinking on this level as well. And we appreciate that you're out there doing that and that you're welcoming all of us to be a part of this.
Thanks, JT.
It's an honor.
Thank you very much.
Today, we are exploring the vital role of advocacy in supporting what meeting professionals do every day. I have the great pleasure of talking to Tommy Goodwin, Executive Vice President of Exhibitions and Conferences Alliance, about the threats facing meetings and how you can be a force for good when you're out in the world. Now, Tommy, welcome.
JT, thank you for the opportunity to chat. It is always good to spend time with a friend, and I'm looking forward to this.
Well, your career has focused on policy going back to your time as a research fellow at Harvard Business School. What was your aha moment when you realized you had to speak up on behalf of the hospitality community?
You know, I am from Florida originally, and I ran off to join the DC circus when I was 18. I came to college up here, and it was just seeing and being around this amazing ecosystem. This is sort of the center of where it all happens. And I'll never forget back in the late 90s when I was in college, we had a lot of protests for the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. It was a big deal about debt relief and things like that. And the World Bank headquarters is on the campus of the George Washington University where I went. And I was just, they would have these protests and they would shut down streets, and these, bankers and elected officials would drive in their cars and they'd get their cars shaken. And it was this incredible scene on the street. And then they would go in and do whatever it was they were doing anyway. And it was my understanding at that moment that, to make change, you have to be in the building. You have to be on the inside. It's far more punk rock to be on the outside with tear gas and megaphones and all that. But if you actually want to make change and you want to make things better on behalf of the people you represent, you really have to be in the room. And my career has been really almost exclusively focused on making sure that I'm in the room on behalf of whoever I'm working for. And these days, it's on behalf of the incredible people in the events business.
That is so true. And so many of us play armchair quarterback, and we act like it's just some kind of TV game where we're reading the news and complaining to our partner. And yet, to make a difference, you have to be strategic.
It is. And you learn all types of government policymakers, whether it's your local mayor all the way up to what happens on Capitol Hill here in DC. There's a language, there's a rhythm, there's a timing, there's a cadence. And just by being in that environment, you know how to do it. So when I sit there and, talk to a member of Congress and say, you really need to help us attract and train our next generation workforce into this industry. The events industry is looking for great young talent to come in. We'll say, okay, well, I agree with you. Well, yeah, nothing happens. But if I say, hey, I need you to sponsor this bill that's going to extend the Pell Grant program for skilled workforce training that we need, and here's the bill number, and here's 12 of your colleagues who are on it, I'm speaking a little bit of a different language and one that they can act on. And so you just kind of pick that up over time. And that's what I get to do on behalf of all the listeners of this wonderful podcast.
We are grateful for that. So from economic downturns and global pandemics to government shutdowns, rising egg prices, some days it just seems like meeting professionals can't catch a break. What are the biggest challenges you see planners facing right now?
The buzzword in Washington, D.C. in 2026 is going to be affordability. I think we've experienced that individually for quite some time. I think as an industry, I think about everything we've seen post-pandemic and how that cost curve has looked and how we're hearing from our customers, how we're hearing from our attendees, our partners, all that about the rising costs of bringing people together face to face. I think what we have experienced as an industry is now being felt very acutely here in Washington, D.C. And so I think how we talk about some of our biggest challenges are going to be couched in that language of affordability. How do we preserve affordability? How do we make sure we're reducing economic uncertainty, which we've seen on issues like tariffs, for example? We're waiting for the Supreme Court to rule any day now on whether all these emergency tariffs are constitutional or not. Regardless of what happens with that decision, there's going to be a flurry of activity in the Department of Commerce, with the United States Trade Representative, with Congress, and we're going to be ready for that fight because we know that tariffs are cost increases on our industry. We also look at other challenges we've seen in the news, like around international travel. We know that there are ongoing challenges bringing our international stakeholders to the U.S., whether they be operational in terms of visa delays or new impediments like the $250 visa fee that was passed last year. But we also know we've got a perceptual challenge right now. And we know that there are some planners who have international associations, for example, or international companies who are skipping the U.S. right now on their rotations. And we want to make sure as ECA, we're doing everything we can from a policy perspective to make sure we're reinforcing that the U.S. is the best destination in the world for international meetings and not seeing policies come up that are going to challenge that. And so it's going to be a very, very busy year.
That's a very good point, is that a lot of what planners have to deal with is the perception of their possible attendees, their executives, right? So it's as much about what's actually happening as it is about what they're seeing.
It is. And, we look at some of these policies, we look at the potential impact of the $250 visa fee that hasn't been rolled out yet. And ECA and others in the industry have called on the administration to hold it permanently. But we look at things like that. We look at things like the visa bond program that's been introduced. We look at some of the headlines from last year around people being stopped at the border, who are coming abroad and didn't have accommodation bookings, for example, and weren't allowed in. And none of those in and of themselves are really material to how many folks from abroad are coming to the United States. But you get a bit of a drip, and you start to get a narrative around that. And you start to package it with things that we've seen from a foreign policy perspective, from a trade and tariff perspective. And you're really starting to see in the data the impact that that's having. And so ECA wants to be front and center telling the story to folks either in the White House or on Capitol Hill saying, this is why our international community is important to us. This is why we need to make sure that the U.S. maintains its leadership position as the destination of choice in the world. And here's what we can do to reinforce that.
And it's a tone that makes the Canadians feel that they are welcome or not welcome, right?
Exactly. It's that. And we want to make sure that, these folks who come to events in the United States, whether they're attending, whether they're speakers, whatever, they're making a tremendous both economic but also cultural impact on the U.S. in the communities nationwide that they're participating. Whether, if you go to Las Vegas and see the lights on between Monday and Thursday, well, that's the meetings industry, right? If you come to, if you notice that you're seeing whether it's in Florida or whether it's in New York or California, this industry contributes so much. And I still think there's a little bit of a black box aspect to it that kind of dates from before the pandemic of, there are these traveling circuses that come from town to town. And one of the things we love to do within ECA is we like to take mayors, governors, senators, and bring them to events and show them not only the event itself, we like to bring them to move it. All these people, when you see caterers go by, when you see hotel staff coming by, when you see someone rigging something, those aren't traveling people. Those are the people who vote. And then they start to understand, this is the local impact that all these events have in my community. And you can start to see the light bulb go off. So we want to make sure that people understand that there's the awareness, but there's the understanding of what the meetings business brings to every corner of this country. And telling that story here in DC and around the country is just so important.
And your public policy agenda also includes taxes and workforce development. What is the biggest challenge and how do we support that?
So there was some legislation that was passed last year by Congress that did some very good things on both fronts for us. So from a tax perspective, they did some tax reform at the federal level. And, when they do that, they're always looking under the couch cushion to find ways to pay for it. And I'm happy to say that they didn't come at the meetings industry last year in that regard. And I think that's very good news because, margins are tight, costs are coming up. Every little penny counts these days. And so we're very, very happy that tax reform passed and didn't target this industry. But as part of that bill, we actually got two wonderful things in from a workforce development standpoint. One is we expanded the Pell Grant program to cover skilled workforce training for the first time. So you think about larger events like trade shows and the like, and all of the skills that you need on the floor to make those happen. You're going to be able to use Pell Grants to pay for that training now. So we can take folks from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, get them the training they need, bring them into our industry where they're going to have wonderful jobs and wonderful careers. And so that's very important. You can also take 529 college savings money and now use it for certifications like a CMP or the DES program from PCMA. Opportunities not only to take folks who are in the industry and get them the skills and training they need so that they can get better jobs and make more money, but those certifications also make them sticky to the industry too. And that's just a way to take that young talent and keep them there. We need that so much. And so from a workforce perspective, we are always looking for opportunities to get people the skills they need to come into this industry. One of the things we're looking at right now is, federal government spends a few $1 billion every year for training for folks who are unemployed. How can we direct that into our industry? Because we know we have so many roles that need to be filled. And how do we get people the skills to join that? From a tax perspective, I think that kind of passed in Washington, D.C., and that's good. We're always kind of keeping an eye out and playing defense. But what's on my horizon is in states and cities across the country, budgets are starting to get a little tight. And we're seeing some states with budget deficits, and we're seeing some cities with budget deficits. And I think about things like the investments that communities are making into venues. I think about investments that communities and states make into DMOs, convention visitors bureaus. And oftentimes when there's economic uncertainty and folks start to pull back, that's when some of those investments go away. Or that's when there could be legislatures and city councils who start to look at taxes that, impact people who come to town, small businesses that comprise the backbone of the meetings industry. We're always on the lookout to make sure if those pop up, that we're able to help put them back down, because we don't want to see anything economically or politically that gets in the way of the growth of the industry. We want to make sure the meetings industry continues to thrive going forward.
I was shocked when Florida proposed taking away the last year. Like Florida, of all places?
It is fascinating, but so often these are dollars and cents conversations. They're lines on a spreadsheet, and they don't really think about what the real world impact is. Think about what the meetings industry means to Florida. Think what would happen if Florida sort of put up, pulled the welcome mat, as it were, and put up a sign and said, the meetings industry isn't that important to us. It would be catastrophic. And the investment that's often made, whether it's in public venues or whether it's in DMOs, the economic return on that is almost unparalleled with other forms of government spend. You spend $1, you get 12 on the back end. And all the people in the industry get supported, the hotels, the ground transportation, the Main Street commerce that meetings stimulate. You lose that without making that investment. But when you're thinking from a dollars and cents perspective, you don't always think that way. And so that's where we work with partners across the country to make sure that they're able to tell their story effectively, because it's so critical to our future.
And I think that is part of the challenge that we've seen going back to 2008, is that people don't see it as one industry. We are so scattered, and it's considered, part of manufacturing and technology and medical and all of these different things. So they don't see it as one big industry, and they don't see the massive impact that it has. And as meeting planners, sometimes we're not our best PR people, because we complain about how hard it is and having to do more with less. But how do you describe the diverse, wide-ranging live events business to friends, family, stakeholders, politicians, all the people you see?
So I believe that the people in this industry are absolute magicians. I think taking an empty room and turning it into what an amazing meeting or conference looks like is an incredible skill. It's an incredible talent. And I will tell you, kind of behind the curtain at ECA, we do a day every year where we bring the industry to Capitol Hill. We'll have a couple hundred people from 30 plus states who come, and I plan that event. And I will tell you, no one respects more what meeting planners do than I do about 2 weeks before that event, because I'll tell you, I'm terrible at it. It is a skill set that the people who listen to this podcast, the people who read Smart Meetings have, that I wish I did, but I just have to be transparent. I don't. I think what people in this industry do is incredible. And I think you mentioned that this is a very fragmented space. I'll tell you, when I came into the industry a few years ago, I didn't understand. But you think about all the entrepreneurs, the small businesses, those small suppliers, whether they're AV, whether they're catering, the folks who are coming in on a trade show and doing a 10 by 10 booth, all of these amazing people, all these small businesses that contribute to the vibrancy of their communities and the local economy. These are exactly the people from a policymaking perspective that elected officials want to support. They want to hear that story. And so that's why we like to bring them out to events so that they can see it. We can point to some things that the attendee would never know. But we know kind of what's happening behind the curtain. We know what's happening in the soundboard. We know what's happening behind that door over in catering. And to be able to point those little things out, that they can see that this is this incredibly interconnected ecosystem of some of the most talented people and remarkable entrepreneurs and growth-oriented small businesses that comprise this space. And help us tell the story that these are the people we want to support. not put anything up in the way that's a barrier to their success.
You know, I went to see a movie. I'm not a movie person, but I went to see a movie and it shocked me, the credits, how many people are involved in making it. And we don't do that for events. What if after every event, we had a list of every florist, every AV person, every conference service manager who contributed to that event and really call out what goes on to make that happen?
What's the saying? It takes a village. There's no greater example of that than putting on a successful
For sure. So this is one thing. So we're going to ask you, what is the one thing meeting professionals can do to adapt and shape the forces that could hold us back or hold us up?
Raise your hand and get involved. Politics is a sport where the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if you're listening to this and you've seen something in the news and that you're like, my goodness, why is my city council or why is Congress focused on this? That's because somebody made enough noise to make them focus on it. And so ECA's job is we're here to squeak 24/7, 365 in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the meetings industry. But they expect it. I'm a professional advocate. I'm a lobbyist. That's what they expect from me. But when they hear from you, you're the person who walks into the booth every 2 years, 4 years, however often it is, and pulls that lever that decides whether they get to keep their job.
Mm-hmm.
That makes everybody who's listening to this podcast a better lobbyist than I am. You control their job security. You control their future. You determine the destiny of the people who are elected to represent you. And so for folks who are listening to this podcast, if you go to ecaadvocacy.com, we've got something here at ECA we call the ECA Advocacy. We've got a bunch of programs where you can get involved on behalf of the industry on the issues that matter to you, no matter where you are. Whether you're in the meeting hall, whether you're in your office, whether you're on your phone. You want to send an email to your elected officials, we can make that happen for you. If you're active on social media and you want to share some content about some of the issues that are important and tag your elected officials, we can make that happen. If you want to write an op-ed or a letter to the editor in your local paper or media outlet, we'll help you with that. You want to bring somebody out to one of your events to show them the magic that you do as the meetings magicians every day, we'll help you with that too. Whether you've got 2 minutes or 2 hours, if you've got some time to dedicate to the cause, we've got the tools that you can take advantage of, get involved, find out what's happening. And once a year, this year it's going to be May 28th, we bring folks to Washington, D.C. We make meetings where you can go talk to your elected officials and the folks who work from them, tell them your story. Like I said, the people who are listening to this podcast, the people in the industry are the best lobbyists around because you live and breathe this every day. You can put a storytelling aspect on this. You know when the rubber meets the road, what's helpful and what's harmful. And you can tell that to the folks whose job it is to listen to you and act on your behalf and really make a difference on behalf of the industry.
Absolutely. And you know, I come from weekly newspapers, how I got started in journalism, and you're in DC, but it's your local city council that has the biggest impact on your life. You know, getting involved at the local level. Most people don't even know who their mayor is, but they change what the rules are locally.
No matter what you see online or on social media, all politics is still local. It all matters what happens in your community, in your city, county, state. That is where so much of this happens. And it's also where the next generation of politicians who are going to come to Washington, D.C. get their start. So when you're talking to your city council member or your mayor about the meetings industry and 10 years down the line, they get elected to Congress, well, they're bringing that lens through it. They're thinking about the meetings industry as they're looking at a bill. Do I support this? Do I not? Do I vote for it? Do I vote against it? They're bringing that perspective in. And we've even got a handful of folks around the country from the industry who are in elected government. There's an incredible state senator in Nevada, Julie Pizzina, who works for a contractor in the meetings industry and always brings that and educates her colleagues in Nevada about that. And that's worth its weight in gold. So whether you're participating, whether you're talking to your elected officials, whether you're sending messages or writing in your local media outlet or paper, every single bit of that, it's like putting pennies in a piggy bank. It all pays off because there's a greater understanding of the industry, and those who are elected to serve you can start to look at what their job is through that lens. And there's nothing like it.
So wise. Thank you so much for representing the Meet Smart community, Tommy. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Go forth and do wonderful things on behalf of planners.
JT, thank you for this conversation, but also thank you for continuing to write about what's happening in Washington, D.C., and from a policymaking perspective across the country, because when people see it in Smart Meetings, the Meet Smart community, it matters so much. So thank you for what you do on behalf of the community. Thank you for your support. And I encourage everybody who's listening to this, you have a role to play here. Please get involved.
Smart Meetings, What One Thing was produced by Bright Business Media. Visit smartmeetings.com to subscribe to your daily dose of inspiration.